The meta seems to be changing like every day while we're in the early stages of this format. So everything I told you a few days ago is kind of no longer relevant. And I want to give you an update, show you guys the decks that I'm using to maintain my top 1000 position in the ranked ladder. If you guys are enjoying the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video. I try to post the most relevant ranked content I can. And we also do some live streams here on the channel as well. So before we get into the deck list, and hopefully you didn't skip ahead to the deck list because we have something very, very important to discuss, which is what does the ranked ladder look like right now? All right, there is a lot of Garchomps. There's a lot of Arceus Carnivines. There's a lot of Oricorio things. And, of course, Darkrai Giratinas. So, because there are a lot of Garchomps and Arceus Carnivines, this Wigglytuff Oricorio deck I showed you just a few days ago, no longer really a great play. It was fantastic for those few days before Garchomp and Arceus Carnivine showed up everywhere. I farmed a lot of points off of this deck by just taking down Charizards and Darkrai Giratinas. But now that those are now sort of becoming less popular, and there's a lot of people trying out the Arceus Carnivine deck and the Garchomp deck, this deck is kind of sucks. So I would stay away from it. But here's what I've mostly been playing. So first I'm going to show you my version of Arceus Carnivine. I played a lot of Arceus Carnivine last format, and this comes from me playing many games on the ranked ladder with this list and changing cards to just give me the best win percentage. So you're going to see something that's very different from a lot of other lists. But again, this comes from me playing a lot of games and doing very well with this list still. So this is what I've been working with. I am playing the Speed Rotom instead of a Leaf or Ilima because with 6 basics, I was still finding myself starting Arceus more than I liked. So I went to the Speed Rotom in order to just give me that nice 7 basic number, which limits the Arceus starts. Obviously, you're still going to have Arceus starts, and when they happen, they do suck. The game gets a lot harder from there, especially knowing that you have no way to retreat out of it. But there were a lot of games I was playing as well where I would play Arceus, or I'd play the standard list with no Rotom and a Leaf, and I just never would hit the Leaf in time. Like, I'd start the Arceus, and I just would not find the Leaf anyway, so it was kind of a wash. Like, you still, even if you start the Arceus, you still have to find the Leaf, and that can be sort of tricky. Then we're playing a red card and a Mars, no giant cape. So the reason for this is that I think red card and Mars right now are disgustingly broken. They have stolen me so many games, and when you're just playing a one-on-one game, if you win, you get 10 points. If you lose 10 points. Just playing that one game and getting those free wins, because I got to red card my opponent after they used the research and a Pokeball and didn't play down enough cards, set them down from 5 cards in hand to 3 cards in hand. It felt pretty good to have both of them in the deck. Better than Giant Cape. Giant Cape has honestly rarely come up. The most relevant thing that it usually comes up in is if my opponent is playing Dark Tina and they attack with Giratina, or they attack with Giratina first with a Rocky Helmet on it, and then I got to worry about the Darkrai that they set up in the back knocking out my Arceus in return with a red play. But you can get around that because if they knock out, if you let them take 2 points, you can then Mars them down to 1. And then they have a pretty, they have 1 or 2 cards to find the red out of their deck. So I've liked this variant. It's done very well for me. I'm sure that the other variant is fine. This just comes from playing on the ladder and making changes as I've seen them to be fit. So it's not like I would say that this is the best version of Arceus Carnivine, but this is just how I'm playing it, and this is what's been performing very well for me. I think Arceus Carnivine has some room. You have some room to kind of tech it out to your liking and just go from there. But I really like having the better odds to get into my Carnivine attacking very quickly, not starting Arceus. Like, if I start Rotom, it's pretty good because I get the free retreat with the Arceus, and then I can get into Carnivine faster, and Carnivine plus Crobat is really hard for any deck to deal with. I mean, you're pumping out 80 damage every single turn, and then once you get to Arceus, you're doing a max of 160 because of the Crobat, so it feels really good. This list is really just focused on stopping my opponent from playing the game while I go crazy with Carnivine Crobats. And the Sabrina, I think, is really important too. I don't like Iono as a supporter, me personally. Iono, I feel, has bitten me too many times. There's, again, a lot of red card and Mars coming around from Dark Tinas and stuff like that. or just any deck that plays Mars. So half the time when I have an Iono in my hand, I don't get to see the value out of it because my big hand just gets Marsed away before I get to play the Iono. So this is the list I'm rocking with. Next up, let's talk about the Greninja Oricorio. This deck is very good if you feel like you're hitting a lot of Dark Tinas, and it can do fairly well into Arceus Carnivine as well, and some of the lower fighting decks like Lucario, Rampardos. It can do okay into them. This deck is great because Oricorio set up kind of just walls out Dark Tina. That's a very, very good matchup for you if you just draw normally, right? Oricorio is going to wall them. You're playing double Irida to just constantly heal the Oricorio. It's really hard for them to get through you. Arceus Carnivine can be a fine matchup if you get into Greninja quickly, because a fast Greninja is going to knock out their Carnivines, and then your Oricorio is kind of free to just, you know, run away with the game from there. Or maybe you built up a Giratina in the back. Well, more than likely, Oricorio is going to give you the time to build up that Giratina in the back, and then Giratina is going to come and finish off what Greninja started by getting you 2 points through those Carnivines or whatever else you were knocking out. It does have trouble against Garchomp. Not great for you at all. Quick Garchomp, you know, you're not playing any sort of hand disruption, so if they just start off with a research and they get that Garchomp early, the Oricorios are not going to stop them enough. You're just not doing a lot of damage, and then they have the Rampardos for the end of the game to get through the Oricorio. So it's a really, really hard matchup. It's just insanely tough. Insanely tough. Some of the other matchups like Incineroar, Charizard Incineroar, it farms as well. You have the Oricorios, and then you have the Greninjas there to pressure their Charmeleons or their, well, I guess they wouldn't ever, they don't play Toro Cat, and the Incineroar is not really going to be doing too much to Oricorio because we have Shaman to heal that passive 10 damage. If they ever go into Incineroar, you can set up double Oricorio, constantly switch between the two Oricorios, and then use Shaman to heal the 10 damage. And then your Oricorios are only taking net 10 damage. It's just really tough for them. So this deck also kind of farms the Charizard Incineroar. Great matchup, or great deck to pick if you're running into a lot of Tinas and Fire decks. And the last deck I want to talk about is Snorlax Greninja. So I am up to 2 Giratina. Yes, starting Giratina is lame, but it happens. It does happen. We don't play any form of retreat. Our really only retreat option is Ilima on our damaged Snorlaxes. And the Ilima has felt fantastic. I really, really love Ilima in this deck. It just feels great to put a Snorlax in the front or in the active spot, build up something on the bench, and then hit them with the Ilima. They're usually not expecting it. Wipe all that damage off the Snorlax and get into whatever other attacker you have set up. I really like it. Also removes a potential Cyrus play from your opponent for the end of the game. But this deck is just great into a few matchups. It can struggle against Charizard Incineroar. Against Charizard Incineroar, you kind of have to hope that they just don't have the Lily Giant Cape for their turn. Otherwise, you can do enough damage between a Snorlax and a Giratina with some Greninja pings in there as well. And that'll do it. That'll knock out their likely one Charizard that they have set up. It's kind of tough for that deck to set up 2. You might even be able to get an early knockout on just a Charmander or a Litten. So then at the end of the game, all you're looking to do is knock out that last EX and win the game for you. It does fine against Darkrai Giratina. It's not the easiest matchup, but you kind of hope to set up like the Giratina checkmate in the back. And you really just need to find one knockout somewhere. You just need to find one knockout somewhere. And then if you have the Giratina set up in the back, you win the game. So during that time, you can leave a Snorlax in the active spot to take a bunch of damage, use Ilima to pick it up, go into the other Snorlax, or go into another Pokemon that's going to start attacking. You really just need to find that first knockout. That's kind of the most difficult part of that matchup, is finding that first knockout can be a little bit tough, but after that, the Giratina is going to knock out anything on their side of the board, whether you have to use Cyrus around a Giant Cape, or you were clever enough with your Greninja water pings that anything that comes up is going to get knocked out by a Giratina plus one more Water Shuriken. So Darkrai Tina, not a bad matchup at all. This deck is very, very good into Oricorio decks. Oricorio Magnezone can be a little bit tricky, right? The Magnezone puts out a lot of damage. Magnezone's going to knock out Greninjas in one hit. So really, you're only attacking, your safe attacking option is Snorlax. And, you know, you can kind of run them off the board if you are able to go Snorlax attack and get a Greninja set up, because then you're just pinging damage onto the Magnezone, putting it into Snorlax range. So then when Snorlax attacks, you get that knockout on the Magnezone, and then the Oricorios are easy to deal with from there with the Greninja. Giratina could also be set up to knock out the Magnezone as well. Yeah, anything with Oricorio is pretty nice for this deck. Greninja chews through the Oricorios very quickly, and you just have better supplemental attackers than they do. Like the deck I just showed you, the Greninja Oricorio list. Their attackers are Oricorio, Greninja, and then only one Giratina. So if you are able to get a fast Greninja online or just Snorlax with a berry, you're able to kind of run through their defenses way faster than they're able to get through yours. And like I said, with the other matchups, you have Ilima to pick up the Snorlax that's eating damage in the active spot, and then go into the healthy one on the bench and let him just start swinging. So I don't mind those matchups either. They're pretty good. Garchomp is, again, a very tough one. It really just comes down to how fast they're able to set up. I've won some games against Garchomp by getting a fast either Snorlax berry hit or a fast Greninja, and then having the Giratina set up on the bench to clean up the Garchomp. And then from there, you know, after that, you force them to have some way to deal with the Giratina. If they don't have a way to deal with the Giratina, then Giratina just attacks one more time and wins the game. Still a really tricky matchup for this deck for sure. For the rest of the video, I just want to talk about the rest of the meta and my thoughts on all of the big decks that are being played right now. So this is from the Frog EX weekly. It's a weekly tournament that goes on, and it's usually fairly big. I think this one has 200-ish people, maybe closer to 300, and so those are pretty relevant results to look at. So you're gonna see here, there's a lot of Giratina stuff. All these Giratina Snorlaxes, these are the Giratina Snorlax Greninja list, like the one I just showed you, but a lot of Giratina Dark right here at the top too. So, but in second place, we have Meowscarada Decidueye. So I want to talk about Meowscarada Decidueye real quick, and let's get a list pulled up here. Okay, Meowscarada Decidueye. This is this second place list, and first thing I'm going to say, I think Mars right now is so unbelievably good. Anytime I'm playing a deck without Mars, I feel really, really bad without it, and I know I just showed you two lists without Mars, but honestly, like, if I could, I would fit Mars into those lists. Those decks just kind of have close to checkmate setups, so it might not be as important for the late game, but having Mars to either slow your opponent down if things aren't going well for you at the start of the game, or again, just to get them out of that one card they need from their hand at the very end after they've taken 2 points is really, really good. Mars is so disgusting right now. And speaking of Mars being disgusted, this deck gets farmed by Mars. I personally do not love this deck. I gave it a try. I gave a try with these updated lists I've been seeing on the ranked ladder, and it just wasn't going great for me. It does, on paper, have good matchups against some of the Oricorio stuff, right? Like, Meowscarada, just, you have a lot of heal to keep the Meowscarada healthy and get through those Oricorios and kind of free up the way for Decidueye to finish off the game for you. It can do decently well if they get a Greninja online quickly, because Meowscarada, again, is just going to heal itself quite a bit. You should be able to two-shot that Greninja back. And then, once again, the Decidueye is going to be on the back line for you. Against Charizard, I feel like it can struggle a little bit. Even with a Leaf Cape, Meowscarada is going to get one-shot by the Stoke Charizard. They can also just do early damage with the Charmanders if you're not able to evolve your Sprigatito. Yes, it would be very, very scary if they were able to pull off, if you were able to pull off double Meowscarada and get them set up in time before the Charizard, because then you could just go attack with Meowscarada, and then they have, you know, kind of nothing in the back to finish the game off. But I still think it's a scary matchup, and that deck usually has found space for a red card or a Mars, which, again, this deck gets punished super, super hard by a, you know, turn one Mars or red card after you've gone research and then cry for help, and then you're just set back to 3 cards in your hand and you don't have a whole lot going on, which is really the main reason why I've kind of stayed away from it. Is there's no walling here, right? It's like if you get hit by that Mars or red card early on in the game, it becomes extremely difficult for you from there. If you can avoid those situations, you're going to be fine. But I feel like they happen to me too much in my ranked endeavors in Master Ball, so I have personally stayed away. Maybe in some of the lower, you know, Ultra Ball metas, there's not a whole lot of red card, not a whole lot of Mars, and it's able to dominate there. But again, for me personally, I don't love getting turn one red carded and having it be such a detriment. Like, some decks can play out of it. This deck has a really, really hard time playing out of it. So Okay, now we'll talk about Garchomp Rampardos, which is another deck for the same reason I don't love. Very, very susceptible to those early game red card or Mars. And the Gibble, I think we should probably swap off of the fighting type Gibble at this point because of how much Arceus Carnivine there is out there. I'm playing against a lot of Arceus Carnivine. I can't imagine playing with the fighting type Gibble. Yes, it does good into Oricorio, but for that, you kind of have the Rampardos in the back. You know, that's what he's there for. Cranidos deals with it. I feel like the Gibble, we should take the weight off the Gibble's shoulders to try to deal with the Oricorios and go to a Dragon type because the Arceus Carnivine is just going to farm you. If they get that turn 1 attack off on your Gibble, you know, if you go first against them and they start the Carnivine and the Arceus, Gibble's gone, man. Gibble's gone. He's not coming back. He's just getting knocked out by that one Carnivine attack, and it's tough from there. So this list, again, I've tried it in ranked. Too susceptible to the hand disruption cards. For me, you also got to worry about finding your skull fossils. Another thing you guys know I don't love doing. I don't love going looking for the bones. Never been a fan of it. And it feels a little bit too high rolly for me. It's very good if you get into a quick Garchomp, right? It's hard for a deck to deal with the Garchomp, all the damage that it's putting out. You have the option to linear attack the bench and then Cyrus it up, Dragonclaw it, get that knockout on something your opponent did not want to have knocked out. That's very, very good. But if you don't get set up quick, you are in a very, very bad spot. So those are my thoughts on Garchomp. Just another kind of ant deck. And I mean, if you looked at the results I just showed you, where I had the standings, there's only one Garchomp here, right? There's only one Garchomp here. And I would assume that is because they were getting very, very lucky with their draws. It is a skill. Obviously, you need some skill to pilot it. No discredit to them, but the fact that there's not a lot of Garchomps here besides that kind of makes me think that my theory is true, that it is a bit of a high rollers deck. And if you are not getting lucky with your draws, which, you know, you don't really want to put that when you're trying to grind ranked. You want things to be as consistent as possible. Okay, let's talk about Crabominable Greninja. Now, this is one of those decks. We saw it a little bit at the start of the format, and I've tried this. I've tried this quite a bit. I really want a Crabominable to work because it is a sort of spiritual successor to Greninja Executor, which was like my deck in Genetic Apex. That was my favorite deck. It was one I crafted myself, and I just loved it. But the 80 damage every turn, you would think it'd be good, but it's kind of not. It's kind of just not enough damage output. If your opponent gets off to a slow start and you have the fast Crabominable, yeah, you're gonna run through them for sure. But with as much Oricorio as there is, you know, you start like the Crabrawler does okay into Oricorios. Not really if they have a Greninja setup. You know, it's gonna do 40. Really, the Greninja's the better option for the Oricorios. But if you started Crabrawler, the guy is probably not going anywhere unless you find your one of Leaf, and then the Crabominable, he's even harder to move. I mean, you would just retreat him with your attached energy, but just to me, like, he just hasn't been good at surviving long enough and just not doing enough damage output. And usually, anyways, by the end of the game, I never really got value out of the Palkia. I tried the Palkia build. It was really, really rare that I ever had the chance to attach the 4 energy necessary to Palkia for him to be able to attack. So, another deck that I don't love for Master Ball tier, at least, but it is very fun. It's a really, really fun deck. So if you're just looking for something fun to grind, this is a good deck to pick. All right, now we've got the LycanrocRamp list. And I'm not going to say much on this because I actually kind of like this deck. The only reason why it's been out of my rotation is, again, because of all the Arceus Carnivine going around. Carnivine farms the Rockruffs, just farms them. If they're able to get that turn 1 and you don't have your giant cape to keep the Rockruff alive, because he will live a hit after that, and then you can return knockout with the Lycanroc, and it's very, very funny. If you don't manage to pull that off, you get destroyed a little bit. So if you're running into a lot of Arceus Carnivine, I would say stay away from this deck, but most other matchups are fairly decent for you. I don't mind the deck at all. I think it takes a lot of pretty favorable matchups, or at least, you know, 50-50 matchups against most of the meta. And it's just super powerful. Lycanroc is putting out a lot of damage early game, and then the Rampardos in the back. I mean, just great. So I like the deck, but if you're running into a lot of Arceus Carnivine, I would stay away from it. Okay, Charizard Incineroar. There's one cutoff card here. It's the Giant Cape. There you go. Once again, red card Mars turn 1. is very, very brutal. Against a lot of other decks, though, it does fairly fine. It struggles with Oricorio stuff. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oricorio can lock this deck out. Oricorio Greninja is going to farm this deck. Depending on the list, you know, I've been playing Arceus Carnivine with the red card and the Mars like I showed you at the beginning of the video. And it's kind of been farming this deck because I often have my red card or Mars after they've done their research. And then my Carnivine is just kind of free to knock out all the little guys that they have on their side of the field. So this deck just really gets punished by red card Mars. It really, really does. Just like any other stage 2 deck where the main focus is getting that stage 2 online and has no other form of walling through an Oricorio or some other basic that's going to attack. It gets punished hard, and you will lose games to the red card Mars. And those are that's maybe the worst way to lose a game, right? Your opponent just plays one card, and then your hand's gone, and then it's just sort of on RNG whether you draw out of it or not. So for those reasons and for how bad the losses feel with it, I have rarely played this deck. I gave it a go at the start of the format when Charizard Inc first came out, and it felt fine. But now that there's so much Mars and red card going around, it just isn't for me. It's sort of been the story with a lot of these stage 2 decks, is if I'm seriously trying to grind ranked, I've been sticking to, you know, decks that are basics first, stage 2s as supporting cast members, because those we can wait. We don't need them immediately to start our game plan. This deck, it needs the Charizard or the Incineroar immediately, turn 2, to get going in the game. And I'll just quickly, while I have this here, talk about the Turtonator MeowEye list. I don't think that deck is really that great. Yes, it is an answer to Oricorio and Arceus Carnivine. You can just beat them by starting Turtonator and MeowEye in hand and just kind of Turtonator, GG's. It's very, very hard to get around that as Arceus Carnivine. So I guess if you're looking and you're seeing a lot of Oricorio decks and you're seeing a lot of Arceus Carnivine, the Charizard Turtonator build actually wouldn't be too bad, because again, a fast Turtonator will sort of dismantle both of those decks. So I know we just went through like most of those decks and I said I wasn't really a fan, but I'm playing the decks that I am a fan of. And I just want to explain very, very quickly like what is super strong in the meta right now. And to me, from my experience, the strongest things in the meta are the decks that either can take advantage of Mars plus red card or don't get hurt by Mars/red card too much. The Oricorio list I showed you, it can, the Oricorio is going to buy you some time against the decks that are using the red card/Mars. You know, Giratina, Charizard plays the red card, Decidueye plays the red card. You can do things in that matchup where it's not going to be a huge detriment to you. Arceus Carnivine can be fine against red card Mars. You have a lot of playable cards in your deck, so you can always limit your hand down. You're very rarely caught with like a 5-card hand with that deck. It does happen, but more often than not, you're able to play your hand down and keep it pretty small. In the late game, sure, things get trapped if your opponent's not taking knockouts and you have all your basics in your hand and you're one of supporters. Yeah, it happens, but at least surviving the early game, where it's kind of the most important to avoid the red or the Mars, it does a fine job avoiding that. And then Snorlax Giratina as well. If Snorlax is just going to wall things while you're setting up, and again, there's quite a few playable cards, right? You have a decent amount of basics you can slam down on the bench, and then you can evolve into Frogadier, get that card out of your hand. You have berries to use to attack with Snorlax. You just have ways of limiting your hand and keeping it out of that nice, juicy 5-card hand range that players with red card or Mars love to take advantage of. So those are really like my top 3 because they get punished the least by the red card/Mars. And once again, you're going to see it everywhere in these top ranks. And if you aren't taking advantage of it already, you probably should. It leads to quite a few free wins on the ladder. That's it for the video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll see you on the next one.